This is the Creative Spirits Podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Benji, and today I have a wonderful interview with Happy Ali. He is a spiritual life coach, and I've had him on my podcast before, but this time it's for a different reason. It's for his book, The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. This is a wonderful episode. Please watch the whole thing and see how much you're going to gain from it. He has so many golden nuggets of wisdom in there, and I really feel it's important for people to start tapping in to that inner guidance system, and it just takes practice. And get his book. It's a fantastic book. It's a great book for yourself. It's a great book to gift to anybody. The holidays are coming up, and if you like this video, please press the like button. Please subscribe and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are, what you gained from this episode. It would mean so much to me. Have a wonderful day and stay tuned. Hi, Happy.
Hello.
Thank you for being
Cheryl.
here
Thank,
again.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I just finished reading your book, The Intuition Bible, and it was really great. I really enjoyed it. It was like my book, my go-to book. Before I go to bed, I always read. So it didn't make me fall asleep either.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because when I read it now, I fall straight to sleep.
No, I enjoyed it and it was very helpful. And I know a lot about you, but I want you to tell our audience about you and about the book, what inspired you, what made you, because I remember we talked about it. I think that when you did an interview on me for your podcast, you were talking about how you were writing a book, right? And that was like 2 years ago, and here it is. Like, I think that's
Well,
so
I
cool.
wonder if it was the same book because I was writing a book called The Heart Lens, and I timelines are I have to look at the
Okay.
timeline. I was writing a book called The Heart Lens, and I did like this meditation at night one time and said, "Hey, I want to be of service. I want to see what humanity needs, the evolution of spirituality on planet Earth. What does it need?" And I had no intention of writing about intuition. I am very qualified to write about intuition. I was teaching people intuition. I was practicing, and all of a sudden I woke up the next day and I had pretty much 15 chapters of the book, which I thought was the whole book written out in my head already in detail.
Wow.
So the book came to me from the world within. So it's a perfect example of how much information you can receive from within.
Hmm.
And it was kind of its own testament. It was really it was its own, like, the way it was created was just literally how what I inspire people to do in the book. And it was supposed to be called Unleash Your Inner Wisdom because intuition is a very limited word.
Yeah.
Like, it has a very limited, very, very limited definition in people's minds. They just think of a gut feeling, or that's something that they knew, that idea, oh, I should have done that, or I couldn't, I got this hunch to do it. And that's what people think of intuition. And I looked up the definition and it said, things that don't come from the logical mind. And I thought, okay, that's not very limited and it's pretty broad. And the day before I submitted it to the first publishers to see if they would like the book, I woke up again in the morning and it was called the Intuition Bible, and with a different tagline, Unleash Your Inner Wisdom or something. And then I sent it to the publishers, New World Library, who did The Power of Now, and then Seven Spiritual Laws of Success, um, by Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle. And I got an email back like immediately with the 3 chapters I'd sent them. They said, "We love the book. Send us more. We'll have an answer for you by next week."
Nice.
And it was one of those things where, to me, it wasn't special because it was what I knew, but apparently it was a different take on the topic. But what I wanted to do was to create a textbook, something where you can kind of go to for
Mhm.
all things intuition without it being too woo woo, but still woo woo
Yeah.
and still scientific at the same time. That was kind of the goal. And I think I accomplished that. But I think that I'm proud of the book. And I really think that anyone that knows intuition will love it, and anyone who has no idea what inner wisdom means will get so much out of it. And there's so many exercises which I really don't think a lot of people will do because people read books and they don't do the exercises.
Yeah.
So right?
Yes.
So
True.
I made sure that the text was enough, that it was a rich text, that it was not going to be useless if you didn't do the exercises. I wanted to open people's minds up because part of being intuitive is first accepting that you are intuitive,
Yes.
because a lot of people don't really accept the idea that they are intuitive. They think that guy is intuitive, or I get hunches, but I can't get downloads, or I can't have prophetic dreams, or I can't receive information from the ethers or my subconscious mind the way other people can. And I think what the text does is really just open you up, like, to the idea that anyone can do this, and
Yes.
everyone does.
Yes, I agree 100%. It made me think about when I was a child and I wasn't really taught by like my mom or my dad to just trust. That's not something they really talked about. Like it just was a different generation and they're immigrants and just trying to survive. And so I didn't really grow up with that. And now I'm trying to teach my children, like, well, how do you feel? Like, what does your intuition say? Like, what is your gut telling you? Uh, I feel like it's a muscle. And I would doubt myself so many times growing up. And made, I don't like saying mistakes, but I could have made better decisions if I trusted my intuition, if I trusted my guidance system, which now in my 40s, I'm starting to get there. And I feel like this book is so valuable for people, especially who are younger, who don't trust themselves enough. And tell us how you learn to trust your intuition more and steps people could take to trust theirs.
Well, first of all, let me say that even once you learn how to trust your intuition, you won't listen all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So that's my disclaimer. I was just telling someone about a story of this huge intuitive insight that I've got recently, that I got. And I knew the outcome. I knew what was going to happen. And I went ahead and did the opposite because I wanted to have the experience. And in hindsight, I do maybe wish that I had listened, but I'm glad I went through it because I got spiritual muscles from it. And my intuition, I have a really cool story. I have a Madonna story that I
Yeah.
tell everyone. I was really young and I was 15. I stole my mom's car and I wanted to find Madonna's house. And it was in the Hollywood Hills and there was no address. I just had a picture of it. And I went to the hills, and the hills are very complicated. The streets are windy. There's a lot of dead ends. And I remember I would get to every single stop sign and I would say right, left, or forward, and I would get this feeling of what to do. And then I did it without making a single U-turn, I ended up in front of her house.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of when I really started trusting that there's more. Then I started testing myself, testing because it was kind of fun once you try it once and something comes true. And that was a huge thing to do. I don't recommend people doing something so big because in the beginning, you just want to maybe guess how much your grocery bill is going to be and practice with really small stuff and then allow yourself to kind of get closer and closer. The other day, I did this thing where I guessed the time and I always guess it perfectly.
Wow.
And and it was 4:04, but I said 5:04 and my brain calculated the daylight savings time
Ah.
and I was about to say, "Wait a minute. I can't do this." And my mind kicked in and it was like, "No, no, no. You got the 04 right and you were off by exactly 1 hour." So sometimes you just have to know that your intuitive mind works in very peculiar ways, but if you don't trust it, well, if you don't practice it, you won't trust it. And you're not supposed to just trust it. The whole point of this book is for you to have an extra voice to help you along the way. It's not supposed to be the voice you're going to have to listen to, and that's going to be what you're going to have to do. I always think of it as an extra friend that we've been ignoring
Hmm.
that knows what's best for you. It has a very strong agenda, and its agenda is your well being, and it wants to support you. And it has a broader view. It can see the future. It can see the potential outcomes of your decisions. It can see the intentions of others. It has so much different information. It could also download an entire book for you so you can write a book. It can do so much. But the point is for you to have an extra option and not to feel isolated, not to feel alone, and not to feel that social media, the news, your mom and dad and your children are the only source and friends are the only source of information that's out there guiding you. That there is something really huge that is your soul and your soul's purpose that has been guiding you uh, along the way, whether you've been listening or not. But now you're learning to listen and fall on your soul's path and figure out what path works best for you in terms of listening to the inner voice, because the inner voice comes through within, and sometimes it comes through patterns and things that you experience in your life and the people you keep meeting over and over again, and those are all voices. Sometimes your soul, and I call this outer intuition, which is really it's an oxymoron. Sometimes it just keeps closing every single door for you because you've made a turn that's not in alignment with your soul's purpose. And people think that they've been abandoned or the world's going, mm, topsy-turvy or something or turvy or things are not working out. But it's the whole thing is that your soul is very much involved in your evolution. And it says, hey, no, no, not that way, not that way, not that way, not that way. And eventually opens the door. And I'm sorry, I keep avoiding my own history and story only because I'm so sick of it. But my origins of like where it all happened was I had a near death experience, which I think we talked about in our last podcast,
Yes.
and I was downloaded about volumes of information overnight, and it really taught me happiness, how to be happy, and it was in 1995, so I was 17, and because of that, I learned that there's a world of information accessible through you. And that's what opened me up. And the more confirmation you get, whether it's small or large, the more you begin to identify as an intuitive or as um, someone who has access to otherworldly information, basically. And when you identify with it, your belief system changes and then information starts coming through.
Right. You were talking about like your soul guides you and doors may close. I remember going through that when I was in college, and I couldn't decide what I want to do with my life, and everybody else was telling me, "You should do this, you should do that." So, like, I was doing things that I was being told to do because I thought this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, that's what people are telling me. And I didn't trust myself. And I wanted to become an art teacher. I wanted to be an artist. And, my dad, for example, God bless his soul, he kept saying, no, go in the medical field. And how are you going to make money in this? And I kept doubting myself. And I did everything they told me. And then I had kids. And I feel like my kids were also my guiding system, where people um, who were friends of mine because of my children started to see, my artwork and what I could do. And they're like, well, why don't, you know, you're such a great artist. Why don't you teach it? And I started to think about it and I was like, yeah, why am I not doing that? And then I began to trust myself more. Um, because I would need that validation from others so much on what to do. I couldn't get that for myself. And with time, I'm learning how to do that more and more. Um, and I think that's what's lacking is trusting ourselves.
Yeah,
And yeah.
but it's part of the process is going through everything you went through, and I did the same thing. I mean, I thought I was supposed to come and uplift the world. I was 17 and everyone said, "You're crazy. Why do you think you're special enough to uplift the world?" And are just you, basically. Very, they made me feel very small after I had this big experience. And now, I've written my second, actually, I have my third book's done already, but it's a children's book, but it's not out yet. It won't be out for a while. Um, but now I'm doing everything, but I feel that the past was kind of what led me to be as good as I am in terms of not to say I'm great and I don't want to toot my own horn, but when it comes to my job as a coach, I've been very effective. And as a writer, you know, I listened to this person who said I was not a good writer and that I would never be able to write an essay. I remember with my first college professor.
Oh, wow.
So, and I remember somebody else telling me that I would never finish what I start. And I remember like my first, and I was in my 30s at this time because I went to college late. I remember there was a time when I was trying to finish my very first essay for my English class, and I was crying and saying, I can't do this. I'm not meant to do this. I'm not a writer. I'm just not a scholar. Someone who would learn, who can finish a semester. So I was taking all these outer voices and I was making them my guiding system.
Yeah.
And then there was a moment where I just, you know, something happened and I was done crying and there was this inner voice that said, "You got this."
Oh, wow.
And I finished it and I think I got a B on it. It was the only class I ever got a B in. But or 3 years later, I think I had just gotten into UCLA. My 4.5-year-old son had just died, maybe like a few months before, and I was a mess. I was a mess, but I needed to go to school. I went to school for him, so I was not gonna even take a gap year or anything because if I was gonna take a gap year, I was just gonna die. And I went to school and I was writing a history class, and you had to take all these primary sources and construct it was another 8-page paper, and I was dying. I went to my teacher. I said, "Hey, I I I don't know what to do. Can you guide me?" Just I asked for guidance to help with the project. And he looked at I was crying. Like I was always crying. I would be talking and then there would be just tears going down my face. And I remember he looked at me, he said, "You need to take a gap year. Like you're not equipped right now to be able to do this. And I remember going home and I thought, I need to take a gap year. And then there was a time when that night, that day, there was a moment where I just, something within me said, no, this is not your path. Your path is to finish what you started. And I got an A plus. I was the only person who got an A plus on that project. And he came to me, he's like, you got the best grade in the class. I said, be careful, be careful what you advise people. That's why I wrote this book, because I feel that people think they know what's right for you,
Yeah.
but you have this very powerful inner voice. And you just have to learn how to tune into it and trust it and know when it's your inner voice and know when it's your survival instincts, because there are two different types of voices. One comes from survival and it tells you not to take risks and be safe.
Yes.
So that's, some people call that their intuition. And it is intuition because it is coming from within you, but it's coming from your more like animalistic need to survive. So that's not, you should rely on that so you don't die or walk over a bridge or like, a cliff or something. But that's not what I'm talking about. Mine is more the information that's tapped into your soul purpose and to your life purpose, the information that connects you to other worlds, to the multidimensional reality of worlds. There's the idea that we all live parallel lives based on every decision that we make. So we split into different timelines. So there's a version of me that didn't show up today that's living another life. And because we're all vibrationally connected to each of our alternate selves, you can tap into the other versions of you and ask questions and be like, hey, did that decision work out? Or how's that working out for you? And then get answers. There's so much information we have. I talk about we have access to our subconscious at the least, because our subconscious is a storage system. It's storing like 11 millions of bits of data per second that you're not aware of. You're only receiving 160 something, which is like 0.00004% of the information coming through you and at you and through you is being processed consciously. Everything else is getting stored. So once you learn how to speak to your subconscious mind, then you can say, hey, can you give me some insight on the other stuff that I've missed along the way, just in this lifetime? And you can get information. It's one of those things where you have to practice. You have to practice. It's not it comes instinctually, but because the five senses are there to allow you to survive, they have to be very loud. So,
Mhm.
and because they have to be very loud, that inner sense has to be very quiet so it doesn't interfere. Because it
Right.
might want you to go forward in life, and you might think that it's telling you to go forward, but there's a wall in front of you. And if your five senses are not, on point, you're gonna walk into a wall. So five senses have to be loud, and then the inner sense has to be quiet, and you have to train yourself. And you have to slow down the brain waves. You have to quiet the social media. You have to quiet the outer noise, and then take a little bit of time just to practice and practice. And I keep saying practice, but the entire book teaches you how to practice. So, otherwise I would tell you all these less ways to do it. But, and I will, because obviously a lot of people are not going to buy the book when they're going to listen to your podcast, because that's what they're here for.
Yeah, well, I hope they do after listening to the podcast.
I hope so. I hope so. But I know so many times I love stuff and I'm just not in a reading mode, or people
Right.
are just not readers. I mean, luckily it's on audiobook as well. But there's a lot of different exercises because every single human being is designed completely differently, as we know. You're an artist, I'm an artist. I'm creative, you're creative, but there's people that would be here that would have zero creativity, and their inner voice doesn't come through them through the same way that your inner voice comes through. Me and you might have a lot of similarities in terms of how our inner voice comes through us, and somebody else will be completely logical. did a talk at a book signing, and I had my twin sons there, and I had them do a gut check exercise. And they're twin boys. You would think they would have similar personalities, but one completely got the exercise right, and the other one, because he's so honest, I said, "Did you get anything?" He said, "Barely, nothing." And I was like, "Okay." So every single human being has a different technique or
Yes.
that works best for them. And it's really good to understand what techniques are the ones that give you more immediate results and then work on the other stuff later.
Well, I want to talk about that. One thing that I really connected with that you wrote about is journaling, because I love to journal, and I feel like it releases a lot of things that are kind of stuck within you instead of, because I feel like our mind just keeps going and going and recycling stuff. It's kind of like our monkey brain. And when we can put it on paper, it releases a lot of things. And I felt that was a good like technique you put in there, journal and just start writing things out. And also dreaming, like with the one chapter on dreams, I really love that. Like that was one of my favorites because I'm really into dreams and interpreting them, and waking up every morning and I'm like, I just lay in bed thinking, okay, what was I just dreaming about? Or if I meditate, I can see the dream more clearly. And then and if it's a dream about someone else, I'll text them right away. Hey, I had this dream. I just want to see what you feel about it. And a lot of times they're like, oh, yeah, like that's what I'm going through right now. And wow, how did you know? And I feel like that's it's just another sense that we can use, the dreams that we could use in our lives, but a lot of people don't do that, or they think I don't have dreams, but they do, and you mentioned that in the book. So I want you to elaborate more on that
Yeah,
section.
I mean, everybody does dream. I don't care if you remember it or not. My logical son, Dario, for, for the first maybe 7 years, he's 7.5. So the full 7 years, he never remembered his dreams and he
Mhm.
couldn't remember anything. And he was just, because he wakes up abruptly and he's just so eager to be awake. And his dream world wasn't really important to him.
Mm.
But his brother and I dream and we talk about it. And he knows daddy can see the future in his dreams, which is something we haven't really discussed. But we do have access to the future in our dreams. And it's started becoming something that was important to him. And because it became important to him, he started remembering his dreams. Now he doesn't remember the same way that his brother and I do because he's still adjusting and he's still very concerned with the world at large and trying to figure it all out, that he has no time to go back to the world where he just came from 7.5 years ago. Because I think every night when we go to sleep, you're really waking up into the world that you came from, you
Mhm.
know? And it's important to first acknowledge that there are different types of dreams. There are dreams that are just your brain flushing out the stuff that needs to come out. There's stuff that needs to be sorted out. Those are the mundane dreams, and then there are dreams that basically tell you how you're doing emotionally.
Mhm.
So even in those really weird dreams, how you're feeling emotionally is a really great predictor of how you're manifesting in your life and what your manifestations are going to look like. So if you're having really scary dreams all the time, guess what? You're having scary thoughts during the week, and you are going to start manifesting things that are not so pleasant in your life if you keep that up. So they're kind of warning dreams,
Okay.
to, but give you but they give you enough time to course correct. Or, and then there's dreams that, might give you insight into what's going on in the world with other people. And my mom, for example, I had a terrible experience one time, and she called me from Iran and kind of saved me because she had a dream that I was going through something, and she called me right away and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, and she literally saved my life that night. And so there's those kinds of dreams. And then there's also visitation dreams where you can visit family members that have passed, and they can give you messages and they can just give you hugs. There's all sorts of those dreams. And then there's also prophecy dreams, which I have them a lot. I dreamt the birth of my children, the death of my child, so many things, so many mundane things. Sometimes I'll get a phone call in my dream and I'll have a conversation. I'll wake up to a text that has the transcript of what I just experienced. So it could be anything, but what happens is there are different layers of reality that we can access, and we access them all the time, and they all feel different. And when I encourage journaling, I not only encourage it for the reason that most people do, which is just fleshing out what's in your mind, which is kind of like a mind dump. I encourage it for the exercises. First of all, it's good to be aware of yourself. Excuse me. It's good to be aware of yourself, your thoughts. So that's the greatest reason to journal. But for the sake of intuition or prediction, it's fun to do exercises and write down what you wrote down and see which one came true, which one didn't, how you felt about it. It's fun to write your dreams because then you get used to remembering your dreams more. And then I say color coded with different emotions or how you felt, and then write down what you've been living and then see if you can find correlations, almost like like a chart to try to figure it out. Okay, when I had a dream of this person and I felt this way, 2 months later, this happened. And I did that eventually, and I figured out, when this person shows up means someone's gonna die. When this thing happened, when my mom gets pregnant in a dream, someone dies. It's just in her dreams, she's figured it out. She gets pregnant, someone dies. I'm like, and then it's scary. She's like, I have a old now people might think dreaming of death sounds horrible, but the thing that I always talk about is everything happens on an energetic level first. So sometimes the death dream is to show you that this death was coming. And even though it was an accident, for example, it was not something that could have been prevented. So it's kind of comforting in some way, like especially with my son when he died, it was an accident, and it was very comforting to know that 2 months before the event and the morning of, I already had the dream, and then I continued to dream about him guiding me to the birth of my children now. So it's a blessing and a curse, which is chapter one. That's what it's called. But it's great. It's great to have extra information. And I'm honestly, I teach happiness and joy, and I've gone through it all. I mean, not everything. I don't want to go through everything. I don't want to go through all that. But I've gone through a lot.
You have.
And honestly, like I love having this extra resource. And I've noticed when I try to teach it to people, it wakes up within them. I had a person tell me one time in my life, I was 14, and I think that's where it all began. She just came up to me, other not the prophetic dreams that came from my family, but she said we were supposed to do something. She said, "What does your intuition tell you?" I said, "What?" She's like, "You're intuitive. What's your intuition tell you?" And I thought, I've never considered myself an intuitive. And that was the moment that really shifted things for me because I said, "Oh, I think this should be what we should do." And then we ended up doing it and we had a great time. And I even use it when I go to Vegas sometimes. I walk in to like gamble, which I don't really recommend. And then I just know in my gut, like, you're gonna lose, just walk out.
Yeah.
And
Just
I walk out, or sometimes I say, I'm here to play and have fun. I don't care if I lose, and then I just lose. but I know in advance, like I'll get the feeling.
Yeah.
So even with that, so life can be very, 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 very more, very, very more fun. It could be very, very exciting and more fulfilling if you tune into that aspect of yourself.
I agree. I remember, I also remember in the book you said the visitation dreams are, can be very vivid. And I still remember to this day, my dad passed away about in December, it'll be 7 years. And the night he passed away, I remember my dream. He was driving away in a car and he was waving at me. And I was in another car going a different direction. And there's significance to the car because when he came back from Iran, 'cause he was there for several years, he kind of forgot how to drive because he didn't drive there anymore. And when he came back, he was afraid to drive. And he talked about his concerns about that. He's like, I'm just going to walk everywhere, have people drive me around. And I would talk to him, it's okay, dad, like you'll learn again. And I felt like in the dream, he was like, okay, I'm free and I'm driving, you know? Look at
That's
me. He was so
beautiful.
happy. So I'll never forget that. I
So
think
you
there are
had that,
those
you had a premonition dream right there, right? It was the night before or not after?
the night he passed.
So it wasn't a premonition dream. It was more of a visitation kind of thing.
Visitation. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So,
beautiful how much stuff can happen in the 8 hours or so that we're asleep. It's a third of our lives, and well, so many
yeah.
people don't even give it a second thought. They just think
No.
it's for recharging your body. It's recharging your soul. It's going back to where you came from. It's tapping into every bit of information that's available out there. It's literally going back to God, or the goddess, the closest version of us that's associated with God, and really just tapping in. The problem is that it's such a vivid, colorful, multi-dimensional world that when our little tiny little itty bitty brain tries to translate it, it scrambles it.
Yeah.
So the more you practice with it, the more you understand. I mean, there are dreams like last night I was a vampire. I know that was, and I was sucking. I was like as a like with I had a partner, and we were eating each other's necks, which means absolutely nothing, hopefully. But there's some dumb dreams that are out there.
Yeah, I've had really like strange, and I'll tell my husband, and he's like, what do you dream? Like I don't even he's the type who doesn't remember his very well. And he's very analytical. So I'm like, how can you not remember your dreams? I love it. Like I wake up in the morning just like laying there, like, what did I dream? What was it? Even before, um, like when my son was younger, who you've worked with and you guided us so much. Um, I had a dream like there was going to be stuff that was going to happen. And I made a drawing of it because that's how well, I'm an artist. So that's how I'm able to understand things better. So in my journal, I drew it all out. And then later I went back to it and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what it all meant. It all made so much sense a year later, like 6 months later. And yeah, I was seeing things in my dreams that I didn't see in like the real world.
And it was
Real
probably
world.
happening around you, or it was in the transition of becoming, and you were able to read that energy early on. That's all it was. Sometimes we're not aware. It was either already happening, and you didn't know about it, and then your mind was in such a different place that your energy body picked it up and translated it, or you predicted it. So it could have been either or, but regardless, it was valuable information. And I'm, certain that whether you remembered or not, as things started getting better, you started probably having dreams of things getting better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did. And that's always good to see. Like, well, last night, like I had a terrible dream and like just it was not good at all. And I woke up thinking, okay, what was that all about? So you just don't know. Sometimes it's
At least you weren't sucking someone's blood. That's so funny. I was so excited in the morning to wake up to tell my kids. I was like, guys, I was a vampire
I know
because we
boys and
watch
vampires.
vampire movies and stuff. That's probably why. I mean, that's another reason. Like, so I don't go around telling people my dreams very often
Yeah.
unless I feel that it's a prophetic dream
Yeah.
or it was a visitation.
Same.
So that's how I've gained credibility in the family because my grandma would tell everyone every dream, and every so often something would come true, and she said, "I told you."
Yeah.
And we thought, but you tell us every dream. So once you learn the significance of how a prophetic dream feels or prediction dreams or something that's really important, and you start giving those things attention and you're like, oh, okay, that means that, I still dream about working in retail all the time. Like it's my nightmare. Um, I like work at Nordstrom's or something, and it's horrible. I used to work at Barney's for like so many years, and that was so nice. But Barney's is closed now. So in my dreams, I work at Nordstrom's, and it's such a different. I wake up and I'm just like, thank God, thank God, thank God. And then part of me is like, am I gonna work at Nordstrom's? I'm like, no, I'm not. The makeup department doesn't even have customers anymore.
Yeah.
That's because that's what I did. So one of those things that you said earlier is because I'm an artist, people told me I need to become a makeup artist because I like drawing women's faces.
Right.
So I did it, but there were so many roadblocks. Every time there was a contract or something, some big thing with a big agency that would come up, something would block it. And every time I was about to make it really big, I mean, I was making good money,
Yeah.
but every time I was about to get really big, something would block it. And I know now it was my soul saying, hey, don't get too successful at this because then you won't be the person who writes the book that needs to be written, or, whatever it is. There might be one person that needs to be impacted by something that you write. I mean, it would be great if it's hundreds of thousands or millions, but one person you could change their lives and it could have a ripple effect that could change the future.
Yeah.
And I don't think makeup was the route for me, but it was the most logical route from my sister and my mother to advise me.
So there is one page that I want to read this um, one paragraph I really loved. Um, Ideally, the more you become accustomed to listening to your inner voice, the fewer messages you need to pay attention to from the external world. It is much easier to receive a message through meditation or a gut feeling than to decipher an elaborate arrangement of events and circumstances delivered to us through the people, the actors or players in our life. Yet sometimes, even though we hear a message or receive a gut feeling, we are too stubborn to listen, which you talked about earlier. We brush it off as unimportant, or we are too fixed in our old patterns of thought, beliefs, and behavior to make a change or receive a specific piece of information. Those are instances when our intuition might need to take external shape to grab our attention. So I've experienced that, um, where we're stubborn about listening to our intuition. um, can you elaborate on that? Like,
Um,
what can
yes,
we
I
do
mean,
to be less stubborn?
well, listen, the first instinct that we get or insight that we get, we need to trust it. That's the first thing. Usually, in hindsight, you're always like, I knew it all along.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And that's the practicing trusting and
Yeah.
not having a lack mentality. I just went through this. And somebody made fun of me because they said, but you're the intuition guy. I said, yeah, but I wrote it in my book that you don't always listen. And sometimes you need to be smacked in the head
Right.
to listen. I was, I met somebody who came into my guest room and loved it so much and said, please rent this out to me. And I said, I don't. that's my office and my guest room. I don't want anyone in there. He was relentless. Like he did everything he could. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna clean. I'm gonna do this, and if you say I'm gonna clean, I am like there." So it doesn't take much for anyone to convince me to have help in the house.
Right.
And I was like, no, everything within me was like, no, this is the worst possible decision. And it was just everything within me was just no.
No.
So I said no like 20 times and he was relentless. And eventually I just blocked him. But I don't like blocking people. So I was like in Vegas and I was like, okay, fine, I'll unblock him today. Because I knew that was the day that he was supposed to be kicked out of his place or something. And just like this kind part of me wanted to make sure that he was okay and he found a place. So I didn't even have to call him. As soon as I unblocked him, he started messaging me, "Hey, I need a place so bad. I'm going to be on the streets." And I was like, I remember telling my best friend, I think this is the worst decision I'm going to make, but I'm going to do it for 1 month. And I signed a 1 month, like there's a beginning and end. You have to move out by this day. Anyway, 3 months later, so much drama happened. He finally left, but when he left, I literally had to like threaten him to leave and say I'm going to call the police. Like so
Wow.
much drama happened that my insights told me in the very beginning, and all I had to do was trust it and not be that guy who didn't want to block, just block. Do what you have to do. Say goodbye, move on.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it. And I didn't like I literally didn't do it. And it was probably the worst roommate situation I've ever had. And one of the worst experiences I've had as a with a housemate ever in my life. And I knew it in advance. I knew it. I knew it. Everything about it. So that's how the universe will hit you in the head when you don't listen. But sometimes the intuition says, hey, you need to stop dating, work on yourself, work on your triggers, and then go back out into the world. Because if you don't do that, I'm going to keep bringing the same person back into your life in a different body with that will trigger you exactly the same way. And that's the outer world interfering, showing you, okay, because you carry yourself with you everywhere you go. And the world is always reflecting you back everything that's going on inside. So if you don't change what's happening on the inside, the outer world doesn't change at all. So sometimes the subtle meditation or sudden shift you have in meditation or quieting the mind or receiving an insight will completely change the trajectory of your life where things just become easy and the universe never has to show you all those lessons.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I'll go, if I can't make a decision on something, I'll go into a meditation. And, if I have to, for example, figure out a date for a party, should it be this date or that? And then through the meditation, it'll come to me, okay, it's this date. So as simple as that. Like it doesn't have to be something
I
super.
love simple stuff. I think simple stuff are good things to exercise with.
Yeah,
Things that don't have some huge outcome. Whenever there's a lot riding on something, a lot of times the intuition will give you a message, but you'll misinterpret it anyway
yeah,
because you want the answer or you're too afraid to accept the answer.
yes,
Like you don't want to get disappointed. So even if it's telling you everything's going to work out, you won't listen to it because you are going to be like, this is not going to work out. Or vice versa. Or it's not going to work out, but you really want it to work out because there's so much writing on it that you color the answer completely. So there's a book. There's a chapter on misinterpretation. There's a chapter on blockages. There's a chapter on your logical mind blocking your intuitive mind. So there's so many different things that you need to be aware of.
yeah,
But there are so many factors. That's why the text is, I mean, it's not a really tiny book. It's not a big book either, but it's a pretty decent sized book. And I feel like there was at least three more chapters I could have squeezed in there.
Oh, I'm
But
sure.
I just my publishers were just like, there's no way. This is already way too much. But I wanted to be the intuition Bible, like the one book you go to receive information on how to receive information. So that's the funny part about it. The real Bible says this is the book to tell you what to do and how to live. And this book, the Intuition Bible, says this is how you can learn to receive information from within to live a better life. And it's different for each person.
Well, I'm really impressed because I mean, I've written a children's book and I've been told, like, I did a numerology reading once, and he told me, "You're going to write a book one day." And I'm like, "Oh, that just sounds, I mean, what you have like 239 pages. Like, you just did such an amazing job writing this. And
Thank
I
you.
feel like it's like a pregnancy kind of for me as a woman, like you're giving birth to this child, and it's a process, and I
And you
just think
hope
it's
the book does well or your child does well. Um,
exactly,
you know,
yeah.
I
And
really there was a lot of pressure I put on myself in as the book was about to come out related to its outcome or its success or whether people are going to read it or like it. And it almost destroyed me. It's just like when you take the responsibility of other people's lives and you just say it has to work out. And there was a moment where I was just like, you know what? I'm letting go of the outcome. I did this because I was told to do it from within, and I don't care how it turns out. And it ended up being number one on 4 charts on Amazon, and then it made it back to top 10, and it was cool because it was like number 3 slot was my paperback, number 4 was my audiobook, and number like 7 was my Kindle. So and I'm sure it's going to make it back up again and again, but it will have its waves. And a book, just like a child, I guess, it doesn't, people don't read it as fast as you read it, you know? It takes a while. And then Christmas or holidays come or Hanukkah, whatever, wherever your holiday is, and then people think about, hey, what present should I buy someone? And you're like, oh, that person's a reader. Let me buy them that book, and then maybe they'll like it and they'll buy it. So it's like a slower progression, unless you're really aggressively marketing, which sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. I've been
yeah.
on like 1,000 podcasts by now.
Well, I hope you enjoyed being on this one with me. I always enjoy having you. Our conversations like are so like I could go on for hours with you.
We have.
Yeah. So I always end with this. Do you have any golden nuggets of wisdom for our creative? Even though this whole podcast I feel like was golden nuggets of wisdom, but like to put it into one beautiful little nugget, what would it be for the creative spirits out there?
That you're not alone, that there's non-physical support that is always there for you, guiding you, trying to show you the way, that you're not abandoned on this planet on your own. And all you have to do is learn to listen, and you will feel supported. You will see the support, and you will feel like somebody's giving you a big hug from somewhere that's a little bit more invisible. But never forget that you're not alone and you have guidance, and it's just waiting for you to listen and learn how to.
I love that. That was perfect. And please tell us where we could find your book and buy it. And yeah, the holidays are coming up. It's a great gift to give. And really, I recommend it so much. Even if you don't do the exercises, just read it. And I feel like people can gain so much from it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, you can get it at any um, uh, online outlet like Walmart, Amazon. Amazon is probably the best way, and then you can leave a review. Um, Target, everywhere that books are sold, Audible, Apple Music, whatever, wherever you can get audio or any kind of book. So it's available everywhere. But I wanted to do a shameless plug for one of my services, which I
Oh,
really love.
yeah, do it.
So if you go to happyinsights.net, you can see all the services I offer. Other than the group coaching that I'm starting soon for the Intuition Bible, which I'm really excited about.
Ooh.
I do this thing called the Intuition Activation Hypno Session
Mhm.
or something along those lines. It's you come in with 4 pressing questions that you have that you would ask a wise person. It's not like some predictive question. It's more like, what should I be doing? What are my blockages? What are these questions you'd really want someone to answer that would be helpful. Then I take you in the deepest level of trance, which is meditation or hypnosis or whatever you want to call it. Tap into your highest available self
Mhm.
that you allow people to do. And then I ask you your own questions. And then you answer your own questions from a wiser, larger perspective place.
I
And
love
then I have your higher self or subconscious show you the future if you take your own advice. And you get to live that moment, feel it with every sense. And then we extract that vibration and bring it here. And it causes you to be able to manifest it even quicker. But it's really cool. It's one of my favorites. It's the most well received one of my services. It's amazing.
It's a
So
group class that you do like
no,
on
that
Zoom or
one is a
something?
one-on-one. You can't do that
One-on-one.
one separate. That one is, an hour and a half. It's just you and me, and it's very private.
Oh, I love that.
The other one is the group one is basically the book. But
Okay,
you're
with the
actually
intuition way.
taking the time, it looks like 3 hours a week. You're taking the time to do the exercises and you're not just reading the book.
Okay. Oh, cool. I like that.
That's really cool.
I'll put it in the show notes, all your information too, so people
Thank
could
you so
just click
much.
on and not have to write all this down and figure it out. So, thank you for being here today
Thank
and
you.
putting aside time for this. It really means a lot to me. And I just love our conversations and your vibe and everything you're putting out there. I think it's so special. And you've guided me in so many ways when I was going through some big, big challenges. And I just thank you for that. And I will always be one of your biggest fans. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. And thank you for allowing me on your show and into your life. I really appreciate it. And I've got a piece of your art right behind this that brought me. It's just behind this backdrop over here. It's beautiful. It's my favorite piece.
Oh,
So
good.
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
You too.